I'm Rita Schmallegger from Tiffin University. It's a small private university in the United States. I'm director of learning design. And that's where all of our online courses. So what I'm going to talk about is a study that we did in the spring of last year, in which 5 of us within our Center for Online and Extended Learning wanted to see, is it possible for a student to complete a course and pass it using primarily ChatGPT to complete all assignments. So that's what we set out to do. So there were 5 of us. We had 1 graduate course and 4 undergraduate courses. Faculty were invited to participate in the study. If they opted in, they didn't know if they would have one in their course or not. And each of the students took a completely different approach to this. Student A, we have 7-week courses. This one was caught in week 5. The faculty were told to let us know if they were suspicious of a student. We didn't want them to go directly to the student. So we were still trying to figure out how all of this works. So they just came to us. So she was discovered in week 5, and at the time she had a 95.3% of the score in the class. She was discovered through Turnitin. Student B, that was me, and I'll get into more detail about that later. I passed with 93.6% of the grade, and it was a graduate management course. Student C, discovered in week 4 because of his unusually good writing style. Student D passed with an 82%. He probably would have gotten an A, but it was a sex crimes course, so there were some issues that he could not get ChatGPT to respond to, so he was completely unable to do one of the assignments without losing his ChatGPT account. Student E, did the best. She passed with a 99.8. Afterwards, we met with the faculty to see what they had done. Even though they knew that they were going to have a ChatGPT student in their course, or there was a possibility of it, only 1 had ever used ChatGPT. 3 of them had never even seen it, and 1 of them had only had someone else demonstrate it for them. With my experience as a ChatGPT student, I wanted to try to appear as an authentic student, because I wanted to kind of stay under the line and not be noticed, and apparently it worked. So I introduced errors in the assignment. I asked GPT to spell things incorrectly, and that it was really difficult to get it to be more average than excellent, which is a big flag. Because I would have to plug in a particular sentence and say, okay, make this a run-on sentence, and then copy and paste that into the paper. The quizzes I found extremely easy to do. What I was surprised by was that because I would just simply copy in the question and the responses would tell me the correct one, very quick to hit. Didn't have to think about it at all. What I was surprised by was that it gave me feedback on the correct answer, or this is why it's correct. It also identified a couple of questions that were incorrect within the course, and refused to answer one, or refused to give me any answer for one of the questions, because it said, well, none of these are right. And then it went through and explained exactly why. I later verified it with the instructor, and in this case anyway, ChatGPT was correct. Forums, they were moderately difficult. The initial posts were more difficult. The follow-up posts were unfortunately, very, very easy to do. Writing assignments were moderately difficult, depending, of course, on the assignment. One of them that I found that when it was given a case study to analyze, it made up a lot of information that wasn't really there, so that took a long time to try to get a good response to submit. One of the assignments required me interviewing a local business person, and we could interview via email or in person. So of course I used an email and interviewed ChatGPT. I had trouble getting it down to make it sound like a conversational local business person instead of being that was difficult. That was, the most difficult part was removing repetitive statements and, reducing the word count. The big challenge, of course, is it has a very limited vocabulary, and if you've read enough papers, you recognize the writing style of what somebody's doing. It's very easy if you've been using ChatGPT to recognize that style. And if a student really wants to work at it, which I don't think most students who are only going to use ChatGPT to complete their assignments are going to do, they're going to put very little effort in it. If you put a lot of effort into it, you can change that. But I found it to be quite a lot of work. There were many things. It would have been far easier to just write it myself. For example, I've got to move on. Citations, at least at the time, it would completely fabricate citations. I worked to at least find ones that sounded correct and inserted those. Although after interviewing the faculty, I found out they were looking maybe for formatting. They weren't looking into them at all. Our university approach was to embrace ChatGPT. There is a policy that they cannot, there can be no penalty for using it. We developed a website to support students in letting them know what it was, how to use it ethically, the big focus being on using it ethically. We inserted design statements into writing courses to be able to have them explain how they use ChatGPT in their assignments, and that worked relatively well. Following the study, one of my students, in his design statement, he would say how he used it, and he was using it quite well, actually, or I thought it was a very suitable use of it, especially since he was revealing, this is how I used it. For example, he used it to create an outline for an implementation plan he was putting together for a design course. And he initially had ChatGPT do it, and then he went through and said, well, this applies to mine, this doesn't, and revise that, and then use that to actually develop. In another course at another school where I teach as an adjunct, I had a student turn in a paper. It was beautifully written, but it was horrible. It was very loosely related to what was being asked for. It hit some points here and there. It wasn't necessarily wrong, but it was totally written for a wrong audience. He was making learning design from the perspective as if it was an orchestra, and it was beautiful to read, but it was horribly boring. It didn't address what was needed, and he ultimately failed the class. I'd invited him to resubmit. I invited him to meet with me. I was happy to go over what the issues were, and he didn't ever bother, and he just continued to submit the same kind of thing throughout the term. My experience as a designer, we already knew that we were kind of in trouble with some of our courses. We knew that in our discussions, very little real discussion was going on, so we'd already made some attempts at making changes. But with the experience of being a ChatGPT student, it was a feeling of, oh my gosh, every single one of our courses is completely obsolete. So we're doing what we can to make changes. For quizzes, we're using them more as a supplement to learning. They're low or no points in nearly all cases. With unlimited attempts, they're used to support whatever resources are given to them for the week, to help them process, for example, what they've just read, or to help them with memorization if that's needed. With forums, as a very quick fix, we removed follow-up requirements, follow-up post requirements, and removed word counts and APA formatting requirements, which I'm not sure why they were in discussions to begin with, but they were in most of our discussions. We've also been experimenting with creating workshops where there are peer reviews, and we've done that more so with graduate level courses than undergraduate. Not entirely, so we're trying that out. We're trying some different kinds of prompts for telling them how to respond, how to interact, how to engage. We don't have any data on anything that might actually be working at this point, but we have lots of different things going on. As far as writing assignments, we're trying to get more of a focus on authentic assessments. We found that we had trained students to write excessively. And in many cases, I don't know how it is in other institutions, but in many cases, we found that faculty were grading papers on formatting and on word count. And ChatGPT excels at word count. It goes far beyond typically what's needed. We found that if we can get students to write more authentically or to be able to do assignments that they would actually do out in a workplace. For example, we have a criminal justice program. Well, they need to know how to make proposals. They need to know how to analyze different things. They need to be able to write about that or how to present that. So, or they need to be able to summarize things. All things that ChatGPT is not as good at. One thing that I had found, another thing as a student, no, I have time, I must be out.
Yeah, no, 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay. We want to have, excuse me, less emphasis on formatting, more emphasis on what the content needs to be and who the audience needs to be. And also more opportunities for meeting with the instructor and getting feedback and revising and resubmitting. We are also, at least in our new courses, looking at introducing more AI-driven activities so that we can better equip students to use AI. So, is that it? No, there's more. This is another area we are experiencing. We're experimenting with having AI generate content for our courses now, based on course learning outcomes provided by the various departments and subject matter expert insights. And then they are reviewed by the program chair and by the subject matter expert before we use the content. This is still kind of in its infancy, and I have my doubts about where we're going with some of this, but that's where we are now, and that's what we can do with the limited staff that we have right now.